The mockery, the Galactic Council Chamber, was filled with light, color, and voices. From every corner of the galaxy, leaders, warlords, and admirals gathered. They came to discuss the strange news that Earth, the small and stubborn world at the edge of the stars, had dared to send only one ship to stand against them. The chamber shook with laughter. The Creel delegates hissed in amusement, their scaled bodies shaking. The Varn Dominion generals clanged their metal jaws in mock applause. Even the proud Zorathy, who rarely joined in such noise, smirked as they leaned back in their floating chairs. One ship, they repeated, only one. Did the humans think themselves gods or fools? In the shadows of the hall, the human envoy stood silent. He wore no grand robes, no crown of victory, only a simple dark uniform. His face gave nothing away, his eyes sharp but calm. He did not argue, he did not shout, he listened. As the galaxy mocked, they send one vessel, a Kror admiral sneered. A relic, no doubt, weak engines and thin hulls, perhaps filled with bravado, but nothing more. The chamber laughed again, the sound rising like a wave across the galaxies. Rulers, the human did not respond. He simply whispered into his communicator, and the message was sent. Far above the chamber, beyond the planet's sky, the human ship waited, the resolute, silent, motionless, like a shadow carved against the chew. Stars, the laughter continued. They are desperate, one council member jeered. They believe they can frighten us with theatrics, a single ship, a toy, against thousands of fleets. Others nodded, pounding tables and clicking claws in agreement. But there were a few who did not laugh. An old Tharn scholar, with silver skin and tired eyes, leaned forward. He remembered stories, ancient whispers of Earth's wars, a world where humans had fought each other with fire and steel, where cities burned, but they still rose again. He watched the human envoy carefully. Why was he not afraid? Outside the chamber, fleets prepared, armadas of the strongest empires aligned their warships, their carriers, their dreadnoughts. They prepared for the show, eager to crush the arrogance of Earth once and for all. They believed this would be a lesson to the galaxy. But they did not see the silence of the human envoy as a warning. They only saw it as weakness. In the chamber, a great hologram flickered to life. It showed the fleets orbiting, stretching across the stars like endless rivers of fire. Tens of thousands of ships, engines glowing, weapons primed. Against them, the image of the Resolute appeared, alone, small compared to the waves of enemy fleets. The laughter grew louder. Some fell from their chairs in amusement. Even the council speakers struggled to hold back a grin. But the human envoy lifted his head, his voice steady at last. "You see one ship," he said, his words echoing across the chamber. "You believe one ship is weakness. One ship is nothing. One ship is foolish pride." He paused, the silence after his words heavy and sharp. "But that one ship carries the weight of all humanity." The laughter faltered, if only for a moment. The Zorathy general narrowed his eyes. The Creel admiral hissed, not amused, but annoyed. Still, most ignored the words they were eager for. The spectacle, eager for the crushing of Earth's arrogance. In the sky above, the Resolute stirred. Its systems hummed to life, old codes unlocking, weapons stirring awake. It was not massive, not shining with alien beauty, but there was something about its silence, something about the way it waited, as if patient, as if certain. That made the old Tharn scholar's skin turn cold back in. The chamber, the speaker raised his staff, calling for order. "Let it be recorded," he declared, "that humanity sends one ship to face the united fleets of the galaxy. Let it be recorded that their pride will lead to their extinction." The council cheered, their voices loud, filled with mockery. But the human envoy only whispered again into his communicator, and somewhere in the void, the Resolute's cannons aligned. The council thought they were watching a fool's death, But they were not watching a fool. They were watching the beginning of a legend asterisk, the silent arrival. The fleets gathered like storm clouds, their weapons glowing across the darkness of space. Every empire had sent its finest ships, massive carriers, dreadnoughts bristling with guns, cruisers armed with plasma lances, fighters swarming like insects ready to bite. From the viewing chambers of the Galactic Council, the leaders leaned forward, eager to witness Earth's humiliation. The human ship, the Resolute, drifted into orbit with no escort, no banners, no songs of war. It moved slow, deliberate, its engines humming like a whisper. Against the backdrop of 10,000 ships, it looked small, fragile, almost laughable. The alien crowds watching across the galaxy cheered and celebrated. Already they tasted victory. Already they imagined human cities burning. But the Resolute did not flinch. It carried no voice, no broadcast of warning, no plea for mercy. Its silence filled the void louder than any threat could. And in that silence, a few commanders shifted uneasily in their seats. Why? Don't they speak? One Varn captain asked nervously. Where are their demands? Where are their threats? But his admiral only laughed. Because they are broken. Because they know this is the end. The Creel fleets opened channels, their voices sharp and mocking. Human envoy, surrender your ship, save yourselves the pain. No reply came. Again they mocked. If this is all humanity has, then let it be a quick death. Still the Resolute stayed quiet. Only the stars reflected off its black armor, giving it the look of a shadow moving between worlds. In the Galactic Council chamber, the alien leaders toasted. Some raised glasses of crimson liquid, others clanged metallic jaws in rhythm. But the old Tharn scholar watched the human envoy. Carefully, he noticed the man's stillness, the calm in his eyes. He noticed how his hand rested lightly on his communicator, as if waiting, not fearing. A memory stirred in the scholar's mind, the ancient warning carved into forgotten texts. Beware the silence of Earth. For when they speak, it is already too late. The fleet spread wider, circling the lone ship. Hundreds of weapons locked on the Resolute. Targeting systems blinked. Missile bays opened. Fighter wings buzzed. Yet the humans still did not fire. The ship only adjusted its angle, facing the fleets head-on. Like a lone warrior standing against an army. Destroy it, a Creel admiral barked, his voice echoing through the command channels. But the council speaker ordered patience. Let them see the weight of the galaxy. Let them understand their foolishness before they vanish. The fleets held their fire, waiting, taunting, surrounding. Their confidence was endless, their arrogance even greater. Inside the Resolute, human crews sat in silence, their hands on controls, their eyes watching the tactical maps. They had trained for this moment, for this one chance. They knew the galaxy did not believe. They knew the galaxy mocked. But they also knew something the galaxy had forgotten. One ship could be enough, if it was human. The enemy fleets sent another message. Bow before us, humans, and we may let your planet burn quickly. Still, the Resolute did not answer. Its engines shifted, its systems pulsed. Then suddenly, one by one, the alien ships detected power readings rising. Not like plasma, not like antimatter, not like anything they had seen before. Raw, brutal energy surged through the Resolute. The silence was ending. In the council chamber, the alien leaders leaned forward, curious. The holograms showed the human ship glowing faintly, its cannons sliding outward, its armor shifting like ancient plates of steel. Some leaders laughed, claiming it was just theatrics, a final attempt at pride, but others felt their chests grow tight. The old Tharn scholar whispered, "It is waking." The Creel admiral barked again. Fire now. But before the order carried across the fleets, the human envoy finally spoke. His voice was calm, sharp, carrying across every channel. "You asked why we sent one ship," he said slowly. Now you will understand. The words hung heavy. The chamber grew silent. The fleets hesitated, and in that single moment of doubt, the Resolute locked its aim. The first cannon roared, not plasma, not lasers, not energy, but pure force, raw kinetic fire. The shot traveled faster than light, tearing through the nearest alien dreadnought. It split the massive ship in half, as if slicing through glass. The explosion lit up the void, burning brighter than a star, and the galaxy's laughter turned into silence. Asterisk. The first salvo, the void of space, erupted in fire. The Resolute's first cannon shot had shattered a dreadnought that the galaxy once believed indestructible. The wreckage drifted in silence, pieces of burning metal scattering like falling stars. For a heartbeat, no one moved, no one spoke, no one breathed. In the Galactic Council chamber, the laughter had stopped. The delegates leaned forward in disbelief, their eyes wide, their jaws clenched. How? How can that be? A Zorathi general whispered, his voice trembling. The Creel admiral slammed his clawed fist on the table. Trickery, nothing more. Fire again. Crush them now. But before the order carried through the fleets, the Resolute fired a second time. Another blast tore across the void, smashing through a cruiser and vaporizing it in an instant. The shields, the armor, the layers of defense all useless. The kinetic strike ripped straight through as if they were paper. The galaxy's greatest weapons, once their pride, meant nothing against raw human force. Panic rippled through the alien armadas. Captains screamed into their channels, their voices filled with disbelief. Shields not responding. We cannot block it. It moves too fast. Their strategies. Their centuries of war tactics, none of it prepared them for this. The Resolute remained silent. It did not roar in triumph. It did not mock its enemies. It only adjusted its aim. One cannon after another sliding into place, each barrel glowed faintly, humming with deadly energy. The galaxy had prepared for a battle of fleets, but what they faced was something else something. Like a storm wrapped in steel, the third shot came. This time it struck a carrier, one of the largest ships in the Varn Dominion's fleet. The impact pierced the hull, and a chain of explosions followed. Thousands of fighters were lost in a single breath. Their pilots never even saw the weapon that killed them. The void glowed red, debris scattering like sparks from a forge. In the council chamber, chaos broke out. Delegates shouted, clawed at each other, screamed orders into communicators. They cheat, one shouted. They wield forbidden weapons, cried another. But the human envoy stood calm, his expression still, his voice silent. He watched as the galaxy's pride was torn apart piece by piece. The alien fleets finally responded. Tens of thousands of weapons fired, beams of plasma, arcs of lightning, torrents of antimatter. The void turned into a storm of light, all directed at the lone human vessel. Explosions thundered across the Resolute's shields, shaking the hull. But when the fire cleared, the human ship remained, its armor blackened but unbroken, its cannons still aimed, still waiting. Gasps filled the chamber. Impossible. The Zorathi general spat, his pride breaking. No ship can survive that. But the Tharn scholar only shook his head, whispering to no one in particular. You still do not understand. You think they play by your rules. The Resolute fired again. This time the round split into fragments mid-flight, each shard striking a different ship. 5 enemy vessels shattered. In one breath, the galaxy's fleets recoiled, their perfect formations breaking apart. For the first time, fear crept into the voices of admirals who had never known defeat. Inside the ship, the human crew worked in silence. No cheers, no shouts. Of victory, only calm precision. Each order was simple, each action exact. Target acquired. Cannon locked. Fire. The crew knew there was no room for arrogance. They were humanity's last chance. One ship standing against the galaxy, the alien fleets scrambled. Some tried to retreat. Others rushed forward in desperation. But every move was predictable, every strike useless. The Resolute cut them down with merciless rhythm, shot after shot, cannon after cannon, until the void glowed with wreckage, a graveyard of burning ships. In the council chamber, silence fell. Again, this time not from disbelief, but from terror. The laughter that once filled the hall was gone forever. The galaxy now understood that the humans had never been foolish. They had been patient, and still the human envoy had not spoken. Still he watched, silent as his people's ship tore the galaxy's pride apart. The silence was no longer weakness. It was a promise. The galaxy had wanted to see Earth humiliated. Instead, they were watching the birth of a nightmare. And the nightmare had only begun. Pastorisk, the unthinkable weapon. The battlefield was burning, alien. Wreckage floated in the dark, glowing like dying embers in a sea of stars. The fleets of the galaxy had gathered with pride. But pride was no shield. One human ship had reduced their strength to ruins, and still its cannons had not cooled. In the council chamber, panic spread. Commanders shouted into comms. Leaders demanded explanations. "How can one ship strike like this?" a Creel delegate cried, his scaled hands clawing at the table. "Their weapons break physics itself," a Zorathi general hissed, but his voice shook with fear. The human envoy stood motionless. He had not smiled. He had not gloated. He only watched the holograms as the galaxy's greatest fleets shattered. He knew what was coming. The galaxy had seen the first salvos, but they had not yet seen the true weapon inside the Resolute, deep in its armored heart. Engineers worked in silence. The ship's main rail batteries unfolded, massive barrels stretching like the bones of some ancient beast. Power surged, systems screamed under the pressure. The crew braced themselves, their hands tight on consoles. They knew this was no ordinary cannon. This was the weapon Earth had kept hidden, the weapon no other empire had dared to build. Kinetic fire, pure mass and velocity. Not beams of light, not plasma, not antimatter, just metal-dense, heavy, unstoppable, hurled at speeds that made shields useless and armor meaningless. A simple idea, born from Earth's old wars, perfected in silence while the galaxy laughed. The alien fleets adjusted their positions. They thought they had seen the worst already. They thought they could adapt, swarm, overwhelm. They did not yet understand what awaited them. The Resolute's first rail battery fired. The projectile was nothing more than a rod of tungsten, but when it struck, it passed through a battleship as though it were mist. The impact tore the vessel in half. The fragments spun into another cruiser. Ripping it open like a tin shell, explosions rippled outward, fire spreading like a chain reaction. In seconds, 3 ships were gone. The council chamber erupted with shouts. "Impossible. No material can move that fast," cried one delegate. "Shields were designed for light. Not this, not this." Another muttered, his voice broken. The old Tharn scholar closed his eyes, whispering to himself. They remembered what we forgot." Another round fired. This time, the projectile pierced through a carrier and continued. It struck 2 more ships before vanishing into the void. The fleet commanders screamed for evasive maneuvers, but against such speed, there was no evading. The shots arrived before warnings could even finish sounding. The galaxy had always relied on shields. Shields against lasers, shields against plasma, shields against every energy weapon imaginable. But shields meant nothing against a rock traveling near the speed of light. The very weapons they mocked as primitive became their nightmare. The unthinkable weapon was not new. It was old, too simple for their arrogance, too brutal for their pride. The Resolute fired again. The void thundered with each strike. Every shot carved holes in fleets once thought invincible. Ships broke apart. Armadas dissolved. Admirals screamed in disbelief. The galaxy's unity cracked as some fleets tried to flee. But the rail batteries did not allow escape. The fleeing ships became targets too, their hulls splitting in silence. In the chamber, chaos turned to despair. No one laughed now, no one. Mocked, even the bold Creel admiral had gone pale, his claws tapping nervously. "This cannot continue," he growled. "If we do not stop them now, none of us will have empires left." But his words fell empty, because deep down, they all knew it was already too late. The human envoy finally spoke, his voice cold. "You called us fragile. You called us weak. You thought numbers made you strong." He leaned forward, his gaze sharp as steel. "You forgot the simplest truth. Mass does not lie." The chamber went silent. The words were heavy, filled with a meaning the galaxy now understood. For centuries, they had refined weapons of elegance, weapons of beauty, but humanity had built weapons of finality, weapons that made no deals, weapons that left no survivors. The Resolute's batteries charged again. Across the galaxy, soldiers, leaders, and civilians watched the live feeds in horror. Every empire realized that the age of mocking Earth was over. They had not faced a relic. They had not faced a fool's gamble. They had faced the unthinkable weapon, and the stars themselves trembled. Asterisk. The turning tide the galaxy had never seen such destruction. What was meant to be a show of dominance had turned into a massacre. The fleets that once stretched across the stars now burned in fragments, drifting as broken shadows. The laughter of the council had died, replaced by fear that no one dared to speak aloud. But desperation is louder than fear. The surviving admirals rallied their forces. "Form the second wave," a Creel commander barked, his voice harsh. "Bring forward the dreadnought reserves," shouted a Zorathi general, her fangs bared in panic. Dozens of hidden fleets decloaked, swarms of ships emerging from behind moons and asteroid belts. Carriers opened their bays, releasing endless fighters like a storm of fireflies. The galaxy was not finished yet, and they were ready to drown the lone human ship in sheer numbers. In the council chamber, leaders straightened, desperate to cling to hope. "They cannot stand forever," one muttered. "Even if their weapons break our shields, they are still one ship." Another hissed, "Yes, one ship," they repeated. "One ship against the tide. It cannot last. It must fall." The Resolute floated in silence, its black hull scarred but unbroken inside. The human crew moved with cold precision, their voices calm, their hands steady. They had seen the second wave gathering, but there was no fear, no panic, only focus, only certainty. The alien fleets surged forward. Thousands of fighters screamed across the void, energy beams cutting trails of light behind them. Capital ships fired volleys that could crack planets, their firepower shaking the void itself. The sky became a storm of destruction. Every weapon aimed at the single human ship. The Resolute did not retreat. It moved forward, slow and deliberate. Its rail batteries thundered again, tearing holes through enemy formations. One round pierced 3 frigates in a line. Another shattered a battleship in a single strike, but the storm pressed closer. The void around the ship lit up with plasma fire and antimatter bursts. Its shields flared. Its armor groaned. Still it moved, unbroken. The council watched, breathless. They had expected the human ship to fall quickly under such fire, but instead, they watched as it carved through their second wave like a blade through smoke. Fighter squadrons swarmed it. Drone swarms erupted from hidden bays in the Resolute, intercepting them with cold precision. Tiny machines, fast and merciless, cut through the fighters until the void glittered with their wreckage. Alien admirals screamed in disbelief. "Close the distance, overwhelm it," they ordered. Heavy cruisers moved in tight formations, trying to surround the lone ship, but the Resolute revealed more. Panels along its flanks opened, exposing rows of hidden guns. Missile pods unfolded, launching waves of projectiles guided by human precision. Explosions ripped through the encirclement. Whole clusters of ships broke apart in seconds. The tide was meant to crush the humans, but instead the tide broke itself. Every move the fleets made, the Resolute countered with ruthless efficiency. Every formation dissolved, every desperate plan shattered. In the chamber, voices cracked. "This is not war," a delegate whispered. "This is execution." The Tharn scholar shook his head, his voice heavy. "No, this is a lesson." Inside the ship, the captain finally spoke, his words steady. "Stay the course." No hesitation, no wasted fire. The crew nodded, their hands moving like clockwork. Each strike measured, each weapon precise. The galaxy thought humanity would rely on brute force. But what they faced was not chaos. It was discipline. It was war shaped into perfection. Another rail shot fired. It tore through the command ship of the Varn Dominion fleet. The explosion lit up the void, blinding those who watched, and in that moment, the Dominion's fleet scattered, their discipline broke, their courage shattered. The tide they had promised collapsed. The galaxy's strongest armies fled like prey before a predator. In the chamber, the speaker tried to shout over the chaos. "Hold the line, rally the fleets. They cannot win," he insisted, but even his voice shook. Even he saw what the others now whispered. One ship had turned the tide. The human envoy finally raised his head, his calm eyes scanning the chamber. "You called it arrogance when we sent one ship," he said. "You thought numbers were power. You thought laughter was strength." He paused, his voice colder than the void itself. "Now you see, one ship is enough when it carries the weight of Earth." The chamber fell silent again. The tide of war had shifted. And for the first time in history, the galaxy looked at humanity not with scorn, but with fear. Asterisk the human message. The battlefield had gone silent. Wreckage drifted like broken bones across the void, glowing with dying fires. The fleets that once promised to crush Earth now floated as fragments, scattered and lifeless. And through it all, the Resolute stood unyielding, its cannons still warm, its hull scarred but undefeated. In the council chamber, fear weighed heavier than air. Delegates who once laughed now sat frozen, their voices caught in their throats. Even the proudest warlords avoided each other's eyes, for the galaxy had gathered its might, and still it was not enough. And then, for the first time, the human envoy spoke. His voice was calm, steady, but carried like thunder through every speaker, every channel, every fleet. "We asked for peace," he said, each word sharp. "We asked for respect. Nothing more." His eyes scanned the alien leaders, and not one dared to meet his gaze. "You mocked us," he continued. "You called us weak. You called us fragile. You thought we were a mistake in the stars." His tone did not rise. It did not rage, but the weight of his words pressed against every heart in the chamber. "You demanded war," he said, his voice colder than silence. "Now you understand what that means." Across the void, the Resolute opened a channel. Its captain spoke, his voice as steady as stone. "To the fleets of the galaxy," he said, "you came to erase Earth. You came to end humanity. But you did not come ready for the cost." The aliens listening trembled. Soldiers who had sworn loyalty to their empires now looked at their burning ships, their lost comrades. Whispers spread among crews, whispers that grew louder. "This cannot continue. We cannot face them again. They will end us all." The Resolute fired a single shot, not at a ship, not at a fleet, but into empty space. The projectile tore through the void, vanishing into the abyss. The silence that followed was louder than any explosion. It was not an attack. It was a warning. Back in the chamber, the human envoy spoke again. "You asked why we sent one ship," he said. "Because one ship is all it takes to carry our answer." He leaned forward, his face calm, his voice sharp. "As steel, you wanted war, and you have seen it. But understand, this Earth does not seek conquest. We do not seek to rule. His gaze darkened. "But if you bring war to us again, we will not stop until your stars go dark." The chamber froze. Some delegates shook. Others gripped their chairs with trembling claws. The Creel admiral, who had once laughed, now looked away, unable to bear the human stare. The Zorathi general clenched her jaw, but said nothing. Even the speaker lowered his staff. His words stolen from him across the galaxy. Civilians watched on every world, in every empire. Broadcasts showed the lone human ship against the graveyard of fleets. For the first time, children of other species whispered of humans not as prey, not as weaklings, but as something different, something terrible, something untouchable. The old Tharn scholar finally spoke, his voice low. "It is not the ship you should fear," he said. "It is the will behind it, the silence that endured until now." His words were drowned in the chamber's silence, but they carried truth. The human envoy ended his message with a single sentence. "Remember this day, for it will not be repeated." He touched his communicator, and the channel closed. The Resolute powered down its weapons, drifting calm among the ruins. It did not chase the survivors. It did not finish the broken fleets. It left them to retreat, to carry their shame back to their worlds. The chamber sat frozen long after, for the galaxy understood that humanity had not only won, they had given a choice, to surrender to peace or to face extinction. Asterisk. The stars remember the battlefield was quiet now. Fires from broken ships flickered like dying lanterns across the void. The wreckage of fleets drifted in silence, thousands of shattered hulls orbiting like a graveyard among the stars, where once the galaxy's greatest powers had gathered to destroy humanity. Only fragments remained, and yet the Resolute floated untouched among the ruins. One ship, scarred but undefeated, its cannons cooling, its silence heavier than before. To the survivors who limped away, it looked less like a vessel and more like a shadow, something eternal, something that would never die. In the Galactic Council chamber, no one spoke. The proud voices that once mocked humanity were gone. Delegates sat with hollow eyes, the weight of defeat pressing down like a chain. The speaker lowered his staff, trembling hands unable to lift it again. For the council had learned what no empire wished to admit. Laughter could not break earth, and arrogance could not stop them. The human envoy rose from his seat at last. His movements calm, his voice steady. He looked at the gathered leaders, each one broken in silence, and he spoke only a single line. "We asked for peace. You demanded war. Today you have your answer." No more words followed. He turned and walked from the chamber. The sound of his boots echoed against the stone, sharp and final. Not one leader stopped him. Not one dared to reply. The galaxy's rulers watched as the human left them in silence, and they understood the decision was no longer theirs to make. Above, the Resolute shifted course. Its engines glowed faintly, guiding it away from the burning wreckage. It did not stay to claim trophies. It did not stay to conquer. It drifted quietly, leaving behind the graveyard it had created. The void seemed to bend around it, as though the stars themselves respected its passing. On distant worlds, civilians whispered of what they had seen. Some called it vengeance, others called it justice. But all agreed on one truth: humanity could not be mocked again. Children in alien streets drew the silhouette of the lone human ship. Soldiers who had once sworn to crush Earth now lowered their weapons in fear, and across the galaxy, the words of the envoy spread like wildfire. "We asked for peace. You demanded war." The old Tharn scholar, weary and broken, wrote the final record. "This was not the end of empires," he said softly. "This was the birth of a legend, a reminder carved into the stars." His pen scratched across the page as he headed. Never again will the galaxy laugh at Earth, for laughter is silence when their guns roar. The surviving fleets limped home, their ships scarred, their captains silent. Every soldier who returned carried the same memory. Of a single black ship, waiting in silence, of cannons that roared like thunder, and of the message that still burned in their minds. Humanity had not sought power, but they had proven they held it. They had not sought glory, but glory had been forced upon them. They had not sought to rule, but now the galaxy would move under their shadow. For in one battle, one ship had shattered the illusion of invincibility, and left behind only truth. The Resolute vanished into the dark, its engines dimmed, its hull fading into shadow, some believed. It returned to Earth. Others whispered it sailed forever between the stars. But no one doubted this story would remain, for every star system, every world, every species now remembered, and would always remember. They had laughed at humanity's single ship, but in the silence that followed, the stars themselves whispered the legend. One ship, one people, one roar that shook the galaxy. And the galaxy would never forget. Asterisk.